Hi, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Well, one of the recent videos that we did was about finances, because people are constantly asking about whether they can or can't afford to come and live in the Philippines, and whether there are many cases of expats coming out here and going broke. So we talked about that, and what it does is it begs the question as to how you handle your finances. Now, I have to confess that I'm not always the best at doing this, but I've had a few changes in the way that I think of late since I came out here, since I started doing different things. But I do remember a basic rule that I had when I handled my finances the best ever when I was in the UK. Now, at this time, kind of consider this an idiot's guide to handling your finances, without going into huge mathematical equations and trying to work out the percentage and I don't know, the angle of the dangle. This was just an absolute basic rule of thumb, and it worked wonderfully for me. At the time, I was working in a band and I had a regular paycheck, one of those few times. So very often I didn't work for a paycheck, and so it was a little more difficult to undertake handling my finances. Okay, I'm back. No, I didn't kill a dog, but sometimes it just seems that they're wired for sound, and as soon as they hear me start to introduce a video, they immediately go off and make each other go off. Anyway, so I was working in a band and I had a regular paycheck. It wasn't a huge paycheck relative to the cost of living and how everything else was working, but I was in the UK, I was in a band, and I was earning a regular paycheck. That's the basic thing that you need to know. Now, at the time I was living alone. I had a house that I had to pay a mortgage on, and I had to pay all the bills associated with living slightly out of town, running a car into town, because the band that I was with was a big band and we were on the road quite a lot, so we had a fair bit of travelling to do in order to get to the pickup place. I don't know whether you know how bands work, but very often they have a coach that they meet with at various places, either on the north or the south or the east or the west of wherever they're going to be travelling to. So I did have expenses on a car for gas, or petrol as they call it there. So I kept getting into trouble with finances. I was trying to do up the house that I was living in, so I had expenses there as well for materials and services that I had to pay for getting somebody else in to do work that I either couldn't do or didn't want to do. So I sat down, and as I say, an idiot's guide to finances was what I came up with. I went to the bank and I spoke to the bank manager. In those days, you could actually do that in the UK. You could call up and make an appointment and go and see Mr. Levy, which was the case for me at Barclays Bank. And I went in and I said, I've been thinking about my finances, and I think it might be a good idea if I were to set up what I call a number 2 account. So the account that I've got with the bank will be my number 1 account, and the other account, which I will pay my debts from, will be a number 2 account. He thought that this was a good idea and was quite willing to help me to sort things out. So how did I do that? Well, the biggest, and this is why I call it an idiot's guide to handling your finances. I'm not great at this kind of thing. I'm not great at saying, my electricity bill is point this percent of that, and I'm not good at that. So I worked out what's the biggest bill that I have to pay. The biggest bill. Now, we're talking about quite a time ago, okay, about 1900 and frozen to death, actually. So back then, the money was different. I was earning, it varied on where we went. I wasn't in a, what would you say, I wasn't in a pop group that had a hit record or anything. I was in a working big band that went all over the country to play in functions, either dances, or we used to play at farmers' conventions, and it varied a lot. So sometimes we'd do quite a lot of gigs in town, and as we used to get paid on distance, the more distance that was involved, and the later the start or finish, then the pay would vary. So sometimes I'd get 125 or 150 pounds, and other times I may do quite well and have 100 more than that. But because it varied so much, I needed to have the money there when I needed it. Now, I'm not a drinker and I'm not a smoker. So those were two expenses which I saw other guys in the band getting rid of quite healthy sums of money on a quite unhealthy activity, that of smoking and drinking. Of course, they all saw that as having a great time. I didn't observe them having a great time, but that was just my opinion. So my biggest expense was my mortgage, which at the time I think was about £36. I know these figures seem meaningless now, and of course, well, they are meaningless now. And I used to, I was a cold body. The one thing that I couldn't stand was being cold in the house. I had central heating, it was on a timer, and I could work out before I left for work. I knew what time I would be coming home, and if I was coming home at 2 o'clock in the morning, at 1 o'clock in the morning, the timer on my central heating would click in, and by the time I got home, as one friend of mine that visited said, you like to have it at 80 in the shade in your house. That was my luxury. I didn't drink or smoke, so that expense was not there. But compared to what others spent, say, on their power bill, mine was quite expensive. See? So I willingly paid that for a luxury that was important to me. The comfort of arriving home in a warm home when it was pretty cold outside. So every week I would get paid, and I'd get paid, say, on a Friday. I would get my check-in on a Monday, and Monday the bank would take out of my number one account £36. I worked out that if that was my biggest bill on any given month, then if I had £36 going into my number two account, I would never have to be concerned about being able to pay a bill. I talked to the bank manager and I said, you know, this seems like it would be a good thing. If you don't mind occasionally having to write a letter to me telling me that I'm overdrawn. He agreed that he would be willing to do that, and with a wry smile he said, well, I think we can handle that. So that was what I did. I have to tell you, I never worried about a bill ever again. I did have one or maybe two letters saying, Mr. Martin, your account is overdrawn. Can you do something to correct the situation? And I'd pay the overdraft as if it were a bill. Well, I didn't have to worry about money. Mostly, I would have more money in my number two account than I would have in my number one account. So it was incredibly successful because I never ever again thought about whether a bill should be paid. When a bill came in, I sat down, and that was in the days when you wrote a check. Do you remember those things? They were about the same time as dial-up phones that you went like this, on a circular thing. They used to have those. I think I was pretty modern in those days, and I had a phone that you didn't do that. But I was always advanced about these things. If you believe that, you believe anything. But I solved the problem of not knowing whether I had the money to pay my bills. Now, it took a month to get that working properly, smoothly, but after that, it really did work. Now, when we talk about coming to the Philippines as an expat, here's what I want to put to you. If, for instance, you decided that you were going to move into a rented apartment in America, let's call it America or wherever, America or the UK, and you decided that you were going to sell your house and your car, and you were going to move into a modest rental apartment. Now, once you got that money from the sale of those two major things, as you downsized from a house into an apartment, you would get, let's keep the figures easy, right? Let's say that you got £10,000 or $10,000, and you got that. What would you do with it? Would you use that money to go and get a nice apartment that was as nice as, say, your house? Or would you downsize in all things? You would downsize in probably the stylishness of your home, the convenience of your home, whereas you may probably have had, say, a 3-bedroomed or a 4-bedroomed house and say a larger car. Then if you are going to go into a more modest way of living, which you must have decided if you made that kind of a decision to sell the house and the car, then you would be modest in your demands for your lifestyle. And if you had been paying, I'm just picking numbers out of the air here, if you were paying, say, $200 or £1,000, $1,000 on your mortgage, if you were paying $1,000 for your mortgage, you probably would be wanting to go and pay maybe $400 or $500 for an apartment. So your mindset would already be in thinking not of the money that you'd made on the sale of everything as income. It's not income, it's your capital. That's your basic backing for every rainy day. So the car, so now you're riding around on a bike and feeling so much healthier. I know about that. And you've got that money, and you've got that money, you would put it into the bank or under your mattress in a sealed envelope, which was not easy to open and therefore not so easy to just slip in and take a few dollars. You would consider the money that you had gained by the sale of your former lifestyle as being unmoney or not money. It's not money. Well, that's not money. I'm not going to spend that on living a better lifestyle than possibly I had when I had a house. You would keep that money. And if a bill came in, you would consider the same way to meet your bills as you formerly had when you had a house. So now you've got 10 grand and you're going to come to the Philippines. You're going to think the same. Now, here's the danger when you come to the Philippines. The Philippines is $1 is worth $53, I think, of the moment, but we call them pesos. Now, here's the problem that I see. People think of the 53 pesos as being dollars. And that's the danger, because they're not dollars, they're pesos. And unless you think in terms of them being real pesos, you will keep going and doing these quick calculations. I do these calculations when I'm talking on video, and I try to put that to you as a way of describing how cheap living is here. But that's when you, who I am speaking to, are living dollars. You're living dollars, you think dollars. Same as if you came from the UK, you would be thinking of dollars as pounds, and therefore you'd think the exchange rate, and these little calculations immediately keep going on and keep going on, and you're paying all of your bills in a different currency than the one that you're living in. And that's no good. It doesn't work. See, if you're living pesos, you need to be thinking pesos. So very often, if I want to illustrate to someone how cheaply I'm living, and we live, if not cheap, we live modestly. And I'll tell you why. Because there is a certain aspect of living here that has its own dangers. You may, if you need to have anything done in hospital, then you're going to have the money to pay for that. And not always, but in the bigger cities, they certainly might ask for the money up front. If you were going to go in and have, say, 40,000 pesos worth of treatment, they might certainly want 20 or 30 before they'll treat you. I haven't actually found that myself, because all that I've ever had to do is pay for someone else. I've never actually had any real hospital work myself. So that's a sort of second guess is what I'm giving you there. But that might be one of the things. A more real situation for me would be a car repair. And you go in and you pay maybe 10,000. That would be a pretty well a top repair for a modest vehicle. Remember, we're living modestly now. We're not in our 3 or 4 bedroom house in a nice community back home in Florida or wherever it is that you came from. We're living modestly now in a third world country. Excuse me. So now you know how you must come across to the Philippines. You come across, and in your sealed envelope, because it's not money, remember, there's an amount of money which you made from selling all of the things that you have been investing in for a number of years, be it in time, be it in money, be it in whatever you choose to think of as currency, but it represents a lot of years and a lot of work. So, you're not going to get rid of that in a hurry. That should remain as, well, your nest egg, your capital, the original stuff, that your reserve, call it whatever you like. Now, you'll have some help on getting rid of that. That's a fact. I've just had a message from someone who asked for advice, and he had met someone and got along very well and had begun sending money to her. Now, this is an aspect of the the preparatory work that you will have when you come to the Philippines. Because probably part of what you are doing is having a second start in life, okay? Probably going to come and be with someone who is probably younger than the wife you just divorced. Sorry, but it's a fact of life. And they're going to need things. Now, if you've met someone who needs things on an increasing level, you should be having alarm bells go off. This brings us back to thinking in pesos and not in dollars. If you are sending $400, in this particular case, $400 a fortnight, I think it was, every 2 weeks, he was sending to this young lady $400. That means $800. And if I can remember rightly, I put that into the calculator, and I think it worked out at something like over 42,000 pesos. Now, it doesn't sound much, does it? $400 every 2 weeks, $800 a month. Doesn't sound excessive, does it? I believe now in America, you might be looking at $600 to $800 to lease a nice car. So it doesn't sound that much out of the way when this lady that you have begun to love from afar tells you some pretty harrowing stories. This particular gentleman, the lady of his choice, had been raped twice, had a child, had a family that she was trying to help, and he was sending her this amount of money. Now, let me put that money in perspective. We build, now do the reverse on the calculations. This is the object of the exercise. Do the reverse on the calculations, right? He's sending $800 a month over for this young woman. Now, what will $800, what will it do in the Philippines? It depends who you are. If you're a young woman living in the mountains, is how he described it, $800 a month over 40,000 pesos is an absolute fortune. We have built a house for less than that. A house. Now, where are you living? What would it cost to build a house? One that made sense in comparison to all of the houses around you, because that's what we do. In comparison to all the houses around, we build a modest house that will rehouse a family, and they, believe me, they are absolutely over the moon with that house, as can be seen on some of our videos. And we will have raised that capital in order to be able to do that. Now, here's this young woman, 42,000 pesos coming in every month. Wow. I wish that I had unexpected, unencumbered 42 grand coming in to my pocket every month from someone outside in another country who cannot monitor where the money goes, what it does, except just on my word. Right? Whenever we've been given money to do something, we show it being done and have been criticized for that. You shouldn't show your good works. It's in the Bible that you should not do this, and we haven't done it that way. We've made it so that anybody contributes $1 into a project, they see the project done, and then they see the breakdown of what it cost. So here's this young woman, and she is getting over 42,000 pesos. She's not getting $800, she's getting 42,000 pesos. And that's the way that her benefactor, this gentleman, should think. Well, what I recommended was that he should think about turning and not walking away. He should think about running as fast as he can. If you look at some of the stories on YouTube on the other expat channels, the other expat channels are, in a lot of cases, not all cases, but in a lot of cases, they have been either expats who have come over here and partied a lot, and in partying they've met beautiful women. And let's face it, us old guys will have our head turned by a beautiful woman. Now, then comes the question of, is this a beautiful woman with beautiful ethics? And very often it's not, and they get taken and they end up broke, which was actually, coincidentally, that was the title of the last video that we did on this. Why is it that expats come out here and get broke? Well, they get broke because they don't pay attention to the way that they handle their finances. And my guess is that a lot of the time, the money that they made into their pocket on selling up everything in their past, they think of as spending money. Easy come, easy go may seem to be the way that it is, but it's not that. What you have sold up and put into my sealed envelope, my it's not money envelope, is something that has to be saved and treasured. Right now we work, Beth and I work 24/7 pretty well at doing what we do. Right now, what is the time? It's 7:15 at night, and I'm working. This is my work. I'm working 7:15 at night, and probably I'll be called to dinner in a little while, and I'll go and eat dinner, and then I'll come back, and guess what I'll do then? Well, probably either I will answer comments on our channel, or I may do another video, or I might do both. So I'm working hard. Now, Beth is doing exactly the same. She is behind me right now, and she is working at editing and posting videos. What do we do with that money? Well, we live as I've suggested to you. We live modestly. We don't go out and spend as if there's no tomorrow. We save, and because of that, we have saved religiously, and we've got savings, which is just as well, because it means that we can meet unexpected emergencies. Well, emergencies by definition are unexpected, aren't they? So, if you're coming over here and you have got your heart set, your eyes on a lady, and that lady has been helping you to spend money, think of what she asks in pesos. Do a little research and find out what the average pay is of someone in the Philippines. And an average pay, Beth, She's not there right now. I was going to ask her, what do we pay the Superman team, who work damn hard when they're building a house? They work, say, 500. They'll get 2,500 a week. If they're getting 500 a day and they're providing their own food, that's what they would get. 500 a day at 2,500 pesos. Pesos, not dollars. Pesos. So you work it out what this girl is being paid. This has almost become an advice letter to the friend that asked me for advice. You probably are watching this as a follow-up to the other one that he actually wrote to me and thanked me for that other video about expats going broke. So he'll be looking in on this as well. Got to think about the pesos, not about dollars. Dollars don't exist here. If you go and you want to fly back to America or the UK or Australia, you pay in pesos. If you have your hair cut, you pay in pesos. If you eat a meal, you pay in pesos. Think in pesos because you're living in pesos. I hope my idiot's guide to never having to worry about your money, given at least a regular income, might help. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. Please like, subscribe, share. We're really on a drive now to trying to gather people to support us by subscribing. Subscribing costs nothing. It's only a click of the finger. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, and it doesn't cost you anything to maintain a subscription. And it allows you to comment, and we think that that's important. Thanks for being with us. This is a foreigner in the Philippines.